thank you so much. We definitely appreciate it. First one is a question for Mark. Says love from Brandon Lively. Says love the show, guys. Great show, Mark. Love the live shows every week. Question for Mark. Mark, you were talking to the real MVP about U of M realistically going 9-3. What teams would those three losses come from? And I will. And you can take it from there, Mark.
Brandon, thanks again for the contribution. Appreciate that. Actually, Brandon, I was saying that Michigan could realistically go 0-3 against that killer non-conference schedule, was what I was saying. No. 9-3. So to frame the conversation right, I don't know what the conversation was regarding Michigan football and some of the things I said. The real MVP is one of our regular callers. He called in. He's very down on Michigan, Kentucky fan. Hey, they've lost so much. Hutchinson, Ajabo, Daxton Hill, Hassan, going through the losses and just not thinking, hey, you're selling Michigan too much. So I was actually talking Michigan up a little bit. So that was the real MVP's record. I have not committed myself to any kind of record. He settled on 9-3. Now, I was on Michigan podcast with Steve Dace today, and he was trying to nail me down to an over-under. He said, what do you think the Michigan Vegas line is going to be for over-under? And I spit out real quick 9.5. I feel fairly confident it's going to be within like a half game of 9.5. They have 5 games they could lose. Do I expect them to lose anything close to 5 games? No. But Ohio State, Michigan State, Penn State, Nebraska, Iowa, off the top of my head, would be the ones that I would consider possible losses. If they lose to anybody outside of those 5, I'd be pretty shocked. I think that this team could win another Big Ten championship. Again, I'm not honed in on any specific prediction for this, but that comes in August for me. But I'm not one to make early predictions, but I most likely think that they are the second or third best team in the Big Ten, most likely, but they could win another Big Ten championship.
Okay, perfect. And Brandon actually gave us another super chat. Thanks again. Appreciate it. It says also same question for Des and Dre. What would Michigan's record realistically be this year? Thanks again, fellas, and keep up the great work. I will kick it to you, Dre. What are your thoughts on? I guess it's a little early, but nonetheless, he asked a question, so we'll shoot and go from there.
Yeah, I mean, look, they realistically have about 3, maybe 4 truly challenging games tops, right? So based on how vanilla their schedule is, I think it's safe unless something catastrophic happens, right? With the quarterback position, Kate goes down and JJ's not 100%, right? Even though I did like what I saw from Davis Warren as a walk-on freshman, given the circumstances, I thought he looked okay. Not saying he's going to be able to keep a season afloat, but anyway. So I think it's safe to pencil in 8 wins at the very least. Now, I would assume that they're a better team than Michigan State. Now, I don't assume. I believe they are a better team than Michigan State. Only thing holding me back, and I said it last week, is that just from a respect standpoint, Mel Tucker is 2-0, right, versus Michigan. So, I mean, I can't, even though I know that Michigan's a better team, and I believe they're still, even after the game, I still believe Michigan was a better team last year. Like, but the final scoreboard is what it is. So, I can't say for certainty if they're going to go and beat Michigan State, but if I give them Michigan State and I also give them Penn State, I'm not sure if I'm ready to say that they can beat Ohio State in back-to-back years, especially at CBUS. And Iowa, it's tough. That's a tough game. I always believe that's a tough place to play. I'll say they lose that one. I go 10-2. I say the Iowa game, Penn State game, God, I wouldn't be able to take it. But if it's the MSU game, one of those games outside of Ohio State, which I do believe probably will be a loss this year, and that pains me to say that, they'll probably drop one of those other games, probably due to inexperience on defense or something of that nature. I think 10-2 is a good season, especially off of what they lost in a transition type year. I think that's a realistic and good outcome expectation.
So I think it's difficult to obviously to make the call on it right now, but I look at it in the things you mentioned with Michigan State. I mean, for Michigan State, they had, everyone knows that their pass defense was really, really bad. Um, and offensively, I mean, a lot of what they did was, Kenneth Walker. I mean, he was a special running back. Like, he wasn't just a guy to come through. He was a very special running back. So to lose that type of production, I'm just not sure Peyton Thorne can be that
But this,
quarterback.
I know. Sorry, I want to interject something. I want you to comment on this. You brought up State. Okay. You, you trade Mike. Sorry. Because you brought up State. And I want you to comment on this since you're already there. Okay. Apparently, all these transfer portal guys that came from national powers, they keep going to State, and they're saying that they believe Michigan State can compete on a national title. So I just want to throw that in there. We view State one way, but internally, I don't know what Mel Tucker is feeding these kids, but they I think Speed, the defensive back from Georgia, and I think there's another guy, a defensive lineman, guys who transfer to State believe they can compete for a national title, which I think is lunacy. But anyway, maybe you want to keep that in your assessment of them. They know something that we don't know. Go ahead.
Well, what I would say is number one. I mean, it's hard to taking that step as far as competing on a national level is tough to do. But I mean, I would also say that Mel Tucker and the guys that he talked to, I wouldn't call that lunacy, because you look at deep into October, they were what, an undefeated team or a one-loss team. So, and granted, that's a Big Ten schedule, so it's not as if they were hadn't played anybody yet at that point. I mean, let's be real, they beat Michigan, who was ranked. I'm not quite sure where they were at that time, but top 10. They beat a top 10 team. It was a home game, but nonetheless, like they have shown that they can compete. I think yes, they were. I don't think they were quite there as far as talent across the board. I think they had some special guys, but they still have some work to do. But you also look at Mel Tucker and his timeline of being there. He hasn't been there that long, so it is going to take time to get to that level. But I would say plucking a guy like you mentioned Georgia, plucking a guy from Georgia, that's how you're going to get there. Because I mean, if you pluck a running back from Wake Forest and you look at that type of production, well, what can he do with a guy from Georgia, a guy from some other powerhouses? So I wouldn't say it's lunacy that that Michigan State won't ever be able to compete on a national level or for national titles. I mean, I think no matter what, you're always going to need some luck to go your way. Like, you can't. There just hasn't been in quite a while a team to just go through and just dominate their entire schedule. I mean, even the 2019 LSU team that we that we referenced. I mean, they only had, I think, a 7-point win or 14-point win against Texas. They had another game within that season that was one score. So as dynamic and incredible as that team was, especially late, they still had some breaks that they needed to go their way. The 2020 Alabama national champion, they had some some pretty big wins, but I think they played Ole Miss to maybe 2 scores. I think they played Texas A&M to a couple scores. Florida game that was pretty close. So there you're going to have some luck, and maybe Michigan State didn't get it this past season, and in the future maybe they will, but yeah, I would still say that I think Michigan is better than Michigan State. You got to prove it on the field, obviously. I also think Michigan's better than Penn State. I mean, the team that I would look at with some concern is going to be Ohio State. That would be the game that I would look at with your starting quarterback having as much experience as Cade does. Going to Columbus, Ohio, late in November is not an easy task, and that would be the game that I would say Michigan would drop. I could realistically see Michigan going 11-1 because I have zero faith in Iowa, and that's just me. But I just think that they can. That's just kind of how I feel about it. I think having a quarterback who is just as even keeled as Cade is. I look at a guy like Donovan Edwards. I think he is going to be a superstar. I mean, even early in the spring game, we saw him catch a streak down the sideline, getting matched up on a linebacker. That's my thought on it. I think they have some explosive guys. I think the big key is going to be, even early on in the season, having the explosive plays. I think that'll be a big key because you have to have those explosive plays, the chunk plays, especially when it comes to playing, the better teams, the top 10 teams, the ranked teams. You look at the Ohio State game last year, like they had a decent amount of chunk plays in that game, and you just won't be able to beat the top tier teams in the Big Ten by 3 yards in a cloud of dust. I don't think that is realistic. Even with as dominant as I think Michigan's defense was last year, but yeah, I would say Ohio State would probably be the game that I would say that they won't beat them, and probably have some close games with, I'd say, probably Michigan State, Penn State, but yeah, that would be my prediction if I had to give one today.